Hello and welcome to the third weekly forum put on by the University of the West Indies Faculty of Sport. If you joined us a couple of weeks ago, you would know that we spoke from the onset about the impact of COVID-19 on sport generally. And then last week, we had the chance to discuss intercollegiate sport and high school sport. This week and today, we are talking the impact of COVID-19 on high performance sport. I am Darren Ganga, Projects Officer in the Faculty of Sport, University of the West Indies, and it's an absolute pleasure to be a moderator today. I'm joined by some esteemed guests who I would like to introduce. First, I've got the panelists, a colleague of mine, Dr. Shamla Rupchand Martin, who is the head of the Academy of Sport at Mona. She joins me. Welcome to you, Shamla. Also, we've got another doctor in the house. She's our sports psychologist at the Mona Academy of Sport. Her name is Dr. Olivia Rose Esperance, who will also join us on the panel. And third person on the panel, a person who needs no introduction, somebody who's done exceptional work in discus throwing over the last couple of years. His name is Mr. Frederick Dakers, a student at UWI Mona, a Jamaican Olympic athlete, and someone who was the 2018, I'm told, Jamaica Sportsman of the Year. So welcome to all members of the panel. I'd also like to welcome everyone who is watching and viewing this on our university platform. We are live on YouTube as well, so you will have a chance to interact with us. But first up, I would like to engage Dr. Rupchand Martin, first and foremost. So we're talking high performance sport. We know that all athletes across the globe, they've been restricted in terms of their activities. Obviously, as we slowly see countries opening up in terms of this lockdown, workload and managing workload after such a period of rest, I'm sure there are risks as it relates to injury, and you would want an athlete to take into consideration that workload because it can have a negative impact on an athlete.
Yes, Darren, thank you. So for many athletes, that's the big challenge and the big question now. We've had all these lockdowns from COVID-19. Persons have been calling in really very anxious about the fact that they're not able to train currently and wanting to train. But one of the key things about sport training, especially when you talk about high performance athlete, is it's usually centered around a particular event. So in order to train and train appropriately for an event, you need to know when that event is going to be, so you can build up your schedule in terms of periodization. And most athletes would be timing this so that you're peaking just in time for the event. So there are several of our high performance athletes, for example, who would have been at different phases along the way in preparation for going to Olympics. And even though we had the shutdown from COVID-19, it took a while before the Olympics was actually postponed. So of course there was a lot of anxiety about training, not knowing what was happening to the Olympics, whether people would still be going anywhere to compete in a modified format. And that created issues with what do you do? Do you continue training still? Do you drop off training? You know, where do you go? Eventually, we got the announcement of that postponement, and then our high performance athletes were basically now left in limbo, still not knowing when competition is going to be, because even though we do have a postponement for a potential date for next year or a time period for next year, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to whether that is in fact going to be the time frame. So this is a huge concern, because I think for all coaches, trainers, and athletes themselves, that whole concept of periodization for preparing for an event has been completely disrupted. And it's very difficult for anyone at this point to make clear-cut decisions about what to do, because if you continue to stay at a high level in anticipation that in a couple weeks' time you're going to be hearing that there is a tournament, or even in 2 months' time that there is a competition, and it doesn't happen, then you run the risk of really overtraining, burning out yourself, and causing injury by the time an event actually comes around. At the same time, if you're training at a very low level and then in 6 weeks or 2 months' time, competition starts again, then you might find yourself inadequately prepared. So it's really, really a tough situation for any high performance athletes, not knowing what is your timeline in terms of target.
Well, let's just test that with our high performing athlete who is on the panel, Frederick Dakers. Frederick, first and foremost, tell us a little bit as to where you are in terms of your own status as a discus thrower. Obviously, you were preparing for the Olympics in Tokyo. How has your preparations been affected, and where you are currently in terms of your training and preparation?
Well, all right. For me right now, I can't really speak that, I'm really actually, ready to compete because, as the doctor did say, it's, periodization is really key because it makes no sense you're prepping for something that, that could be canceled. As say, you might run the risk of being, overtraining and, even probably hurt yourself. Because the whole thing was that this whole season, everyone was really, the whole training period was really aimed at, peaking at the Olympics, despite everything that's going on, the meets and everything, the end game was actually, to do well at the Olympics. So for the entire Olympics and, and a few meets this whole period, it has been it has been really confusing for athletes because we're hearing that, it's going to happen, it's not going to happen, it's going to happen. And, that really, takes it really attacks the mind because you cannot always be ready. You can't always be on point when, competition, at the drop of a pin, you can't be ready because the body doesn't work like that because you have to prep for the competitions. So for me in training, I'm okay in terms of I'm lifting and I'm in terms of strength, I'm okay somewhat. I'm not where I'm supposed to be, but I think I have enough to actually do well, based on my standards. But I don't think I have enough to do what I want to do or what was planned for the season. Because I'm hearing that there's a provisional list for the competitions. This is in terms of track and field. I think it starts in August. So I think we have a bit of time, but I don't think we have enough time to be at optimal level to say, okay, cool, I'm at my best right now. But I think as time goes by, I might get better. And I think other athletes are, seeing that, there is a ray of hope in terms of competition and actually performing. So, yeah, that's really where I'm at.
Well, I want to ask you a little bit. I mean, when we talk about a high-performing athlete or an elite athlete, you don't usually just speak about the athlete himself or herself. There's usually a coach, there's a support team, your parents, your guardians, they are the ones who provide that support. What's the message from your coach and those people close to you now in terms of getting you ready for high-level competition?
I'd more say, don't rush the process. Never rush the process. Don't try to, force the body to get better. Don't try to force the mind. You have a lot of people they don't really understand how, athletes actually operate in terms of getting prep for competition. And a lot of people might be down on you. Oh my God, despite, all right, for example, I threw 69 as an opener. My PR is 70 meters. So a lot of people probably see if I throw now, probably I can give them probably maybe a 65. They probably would start to stress and say, oh my God, you're not where you're supposed to, you're falling off. But obviously, you are going to fall off because of this whole COVID pandemic. So, that's a given. And a lot of people are really stressing that, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. Just take the time and really understand, be very considerate to the athlete that, you might not be where you're supposed to, but this is not normal times. And we need to, address that as such. So, for my advice to the whole care system of the athlete, just be slow and steady. Slow and steady. Don't try to rush it. You might injure yourself, and that might set you back for a year or two. So, be considerate and just take time to be better. That's my thing.
Well, the Olympics it's rescheduled for 2021, just about a year beyond when the Olympics in 2020 was supposed to happen. You spoke about the mind. Let's bring in Dr. Olivia Rose Esperance here. You've heard the comments from Dr. Rupchand Martin and from Frederick Dakers. What's the process that an athlete is going through right now, where they can't control the environment? There are limiting factors in terms of what they're accustomed doing. How should a high-performing athlete treat with this current COVID-19 situation?
All right, thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. This situation, as was mentioned earlier by Frederick, is not a normal situation. And as challenging as these times can be, there are also rays of hope and sunshine, and will ultimately depend on your mental fortitude and how you react or don't react to what's happening to you. So athletes and high performance athletes are in a pool of persons right now who, like everybody else, has to make significant adjustments in terms of work schedule, etc. So the way in which an athlete will deal with a situation currently now is going to be based on their own level of anxiety and how they're able to deal with that. As Frederick mentioned earlier, what happens now is an intensity of anxiety because there's so much unknown. You don't know when you're going to start again and how to adjust accordingly. But one of the good things is that nobody's at an added advantage depending on how you look at it, because all athletes are going through this similar period of the process of dealing with or having cancellations as a result of the COVID-19. So my message really is going to be dependent on how you cope. Coping with anxiety can be done on an individual and group level because we all don't cope in the same way. And support and reaching out for support will become very crucial at this time. So pacing yourself, and I am so happy that Frederick also mentioned the importance of having a support system that understands the routines and the rigor and the pace at which people are able to perform. And especially since we're talking about high performance athletes, I want us to also be mindful of the fact that you don't want to win or excel more than they do. So if a person opens at a performance that you consider to be a subpar, they are putting in the additional work and effort to get it to a level that they want to. And with the absurdity of all of what's happening now, it's just going to be based on taking it a day at a time, surrounding yourself with persons who encourage and keep you motivated during this period of uncertainty. And you also just trusting the process, being patient with yourself and understanding that we are all in this together.
Yeah, I want to bring Dr. Rupchand Martin into the discussion again and raise a term which I read recently. It's called telehealth. Dr. Rupchand Martin, you're into physical therapy and rehabilitation. I'm sure for high-performing athletes, they spend a lot of time on the physio bench. How do you now manage and develop a new protocol to deal with high-performing athletes when you've got to diagnose and treat athletes?
That's quite a challenge, Darren, and I've not been involved in direct physical rehabilitation aspect for the past couple of years, so fortunately I don't have to deal with it hands-on myself, but I've been juggling with my staff at the UWI Sports Medicine Clinic as to how do they go about continuing to treat the athletes that we have. And telehealth, that concept has been around for a little while, but we've not been using it in the Caribbean. So my team has had to adapt to that concept of trying to do video conferencing calls with the athletes, and not just athletes, but even our regular clients who were dealing with all kinds of health problems prior to this. And it's been an interesting road and an interesting experience for them, trying to, walk a patient through doing tests in a remote environment and making a diagnosis and, providing instructions in terms of treatment. So it's actually been an interesting challenge for them. And there are in a certain sense, there are times that I think they do feel compromised with regards to the care that they're providing, but you're doing the best you can, because in rehab, especially with the athletes, actually, there's a lot of hands-on techniques that we do. And there is no replication for those hands-on techniques for everything that the athlete can do it themselves. And it's difficult to instruct someone who may be at home with them in these techniques because they're highly specialized. So for us, the frustration that I see my staff experiencing is related to the fact that they don't feel that they're able to give the 100% that they want to the athletes. And the athletes themselves, I think, are also a little bit frustrated by that. So you're doing the best you can, and I think it's better than not doing anything at all. But from our perspective, the concept of virtual rehab, virtual care, telecare, it's at a compromise level for us. And both the staff and the athletes, I think, would reflect the same. Whoever has been having treatment done, though, they're actually very grateful that we were able to continue to provide care during the period when we were completely locked down. Now we're actually back to clients being able to come in and be seen at the clinic itself.
Yeah, I want to come back to you. I'll come back to you a little bit later on in terms of before an athlete starts or returns to training and competition, what sort of protocols persons should be taken into consideration before that happens. But I'd like to introduce a guest who joins us. He's from Barbados, a colleague of ours at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Rudolph Allen, who's a sports scientist at Cave Hill campus. We've spoken about the athletic side and what an athlete has gone through mentally. Frederick Dakers was very kind in expressing that. We spoke a little bit about the psychological impact of COVID-19. For a high-performing athlete, sports science is a definite. It's something that is used to give you cutting-edge performances. From your perspective, Dr. Allen, how should a high-performing athlete use sports science now in his or her return to training and eventually competition?
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for having me again on the forum. I've always said, and I think the last time I said this, we need to recognize and understand that sports really is a science, and how we practice, develop, and try to get sports to the highest level involves every aspect of science. If you think about the biomechanics of it, you think of the exercise physiology, the sports psychology, the sports nutrition, even the sports management and the sociology of sports, they are all caught up in the science. So it's very important that a high performance athlete or high performing athlete include all of these aspects of the sports sciences in terms of their development and their training towards becoming the best athlete in the world. So, for instance, let's go to exercise physiology. When we talk exercise physiology, we're really talking about training. The major aspect of that is about training the energy system and how each sport fits into those energy systems. So, for instance, a 100-meter runner will not train in the same way that a 400-meter runner or a marathon runner will train. So for each specific sport, right, there's a specific way of training for that sport as it relates to the exercise physiology. As it relates to the sports psychology, there may be something too as well that you may focus more on for a 100-meter runner than you may focus on for a cricketer or for a footballer, all right? Most of the stuff is going to apply, but there's some things that may be more specific. And as you get to that higher realm of sport, right, the margin for victory, the margins between first and second become very small. So that's where the importance and the inclusion of sports science becomes very important, right?
Yeah. I've heard the term used by a few countries which are now getting back into some level of normalcy. When it relates to high performance, they speak about having and developing a culture which is get in, train, get out to minimize risk. Is that something that you would also advocate in your field?
Well, yes. As again, it speaks very to the specifics of the sport and what you're looking for. So, for example, in this period, I heard Olivia speak about it and Frederick. In this period where it's kind of a downtime where there's not much going on, there's still things that the athlete can do to help, remain relevant, remain fit, and try to maintain that fitness level. So he can work on things like the fitness levels in terms of core strength. I heard Frederick talking about doing strength work. You can work on things like mobility. You can work on things like speed. You can work on the mental side, particularly now. This is a really, really good time to work on the mental aspect of your game, all right? And help, and this is really, 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 really needed. When things are down, you don't know when you're going to be going to competition next. The mental side of the game right now is very important.
Yeah, well, Frederick, I just want to, find out if that tag resonates with you. Get in, train, get out. I mean, you virtually participate in a non-contact sport, you would say, as a discus thrower. Is that an approach that you have adopted in the past, or is that something that you're looking at adopting going forward, post-COVID-19?
For me, it's more about actually, yeah. So when I talk about even the mind, I heard Dr. All right. So in regards to the mind and all that, right now it's a really tough time for athletes because we're not really doing much. So it's really hard for someone who's very physical, and we are very physical people, so we get in and we train and all that, and get out and all that. But what happens to the mind is that you cannot stay at the highest level, in terms of your mindset and actually competing at the highest level. You can't keep your mindset at that point always. Eventually you'll have a lag and right now the lag is happening because a lot of athletes are saying that they're not going to compete now, even if the season happens. So the mind is really, as I said, they've been in limbo for a while because it's recently that the schedule actually came out. So to get in and train.
Well, let's ask Dr. Olivier Rose-Esperance. I mean, clearly there is a need for sports psychology to provide support for high-performing athletes and those who would have been slated to compete in the Olympics in Tokyo in 2020. What's your message to these athletes in this situation?
Okay, so first my message would be based on how negative the impact of the COVID-19 is affecting you. For instance, as I've mentioned earlier, we all don't cope in the same way, but for an athlete who is used to, or people who work in sports, because we're talking about sports in general, especially a high performance athlete, we need to examine some of the things that they were accustomed to that they can no longer do, which now impact and will cause the thoughts to spiral off into all different directions. For example, a high performance athlete is used to frequent travel. None of that can happen currently. They're used to highly active lifestyles. Now, a situation of the COVID-19 and forced lockdown is the total opposite of that. So what can happen is that you can see very positive, champion-like winners morph into warriors and people who are just so uncertain and not able to cope. Because many persons have been saying and using the tagline, work from home. But the truth is, people who work in sports, especially high-performance athletes, they don't really work from home. So adjusting to these will really require a lot of different and a combination of coping mechanisms. Some include, once you are aware that the thoughts are spiraling and you can map your dominant negative thoughts. Okay, so I don't want to compete when the season is open. I don't feel that I will be good enough. Whilst those thoughts are spiraling out and probably out of control, I am suggesting that you take a moment to recenter yourself. This is easier said than done, which requires practice with a trained professional, and this is where mental training comes in. And you just try to say, what advice would you give to somebody who, for instance, is going through the same thing? Sometimes when we shift the focus from self, it allows us to recenter and to find things about us that we can be grateful for. And as much as stress and anxiety and boredom are on a high note, there are still many things that athletes, especially high performance athletes, can do during the time we occupied. It can do some rebranding, and again, this comes into the whole sports marketing aspect. Spend some time developing your brand, because a lot of things are happening now online, and reaching out to family, because again, as I said, high performance people travel a lot. Many times their families don't even see them. So it's really about taking life a day at a time. We call those techniques so many different things. Engaging in mindful activities. There are several mindfulness resources online as well that you can use and tap into. And of course, you can continue to do your work with a trained professional who will help you and provide support to you, that you can be able to, one, be accountable during this period of, there are things that you can do, but if you just think that it's just a free for all time, you may lapse into unhealthy negative coping styles, which will impact your return when the season is open. So it's really about being self-aware, being truthful about how you are feeling, map those thoughts, identify them, sit with them for a little bit, and then say, really, what is the opposite of this? Or what advice would I give somebody who is going through this very same thing? Are just some of the simple things that you can do now. And of course, gratitude goes a very, very far way, whether you are high performance or not.
Great advice there, Doctor. And I think, everyone speaks so highly about the psychological aspect of sport and how important it is. I think we have a question from one of our viewers.
Yes, we have a question from Lone Star, Jamaica. Is there a stress management guide with practical skills to help young athletes cope with stress during COVID-19?
I think, Olivia, you might want to answer that.
A practical guide for athletes or just a specific age group? There is a practical guide.
The question says young athletes.
Okay, so thank you. For young athletes. Now, the thing about children is that they participate in the sport for the sake of initially having fun, right? And not being able to have fun as they're used to is going to take a lot of creativity from those who provide training, such as coaches and parents, in helping them to understand what's going on. So it's okay to feel disappointed that you are not able to compete in kiddies champs or boys and girls championships at the adolescent level, and understanding this disappointment, but understanding that there is a way greater this virus at hand, and there are certain things that staying alive and adapting right now to these challenging times are way more important. But incorporating them, explaining things to children in a way that is understandable but does not suggest and scare them so that they're afraid to compete or don't want to engage in any form of physical activity. There are practical things that they can do as well. I have seen a lot of coaches try to send their schedules to their parents and have them participate in different physical activity and just staying fit as best as possible. Having different activities with them that you can do and bond in terms of team building. So you may not be able to necessarily go out physically, but let's get to know each other on the team, because many times people are on a team and the only thing they know about each other is which event somebody else participates or competes in. So integrating them in different activities together and just communicating to them clearly what's happening. And of course, if it is that they are not able to deal with these anxiety and high levels of stress, please seek additional help. Do not think that you can take it all on your own.
Excellent advice there and a good response to that question. I want to shift the conversation now to Dr. Allen, because I know we have limited time with him. Dr. Allen, is there sufficient sports science labs throughout the Caribbean region to serve the needs of our high-performing athletes?
Very good question, Darren. I'm only aware right now of, in the Eastern Caribbean, the facility which we have at Cave campus. I'm not sure what exists across the other islands, but to my knowledge, we have probably the only high performance sports lab here at KFIL campus. So in terms of whether there is enough, no, there isn't enough. That's something which I think most governments of the region need to put a greater focus and emphasis on developing high performance sport, and not only having the facilities, but also having the personnel, the trained personnel to be able to carry out the development of sport throughout the region. So we need more biomechanics in the region. There are lots of people who are interested in sports psychology. I don't know, maybe it's a softer science, and maybe people like the whole idea of helping people to be able to reach that level, because sports psychology to me gives the extra edge to those high performers. But we need more biomechanics, we need more nutritionists for sure, sports nutritionists. We need more exercise physiologists across the region. And if we really see sports as an industry across the region, we really need to put a little bit more focus and emphasis in developing the sports throughout the region.
Well, I hope a lot of governments are listening to you. And one person who will appreciate this, Dr. Allen, thanks for your time. I'd like to welcome a very special guest of ours who joins us all the way from the Canary Islands. It's none other than Mr. Andrew Lewis, who is an Olympic sailor from Trinidad and Tobago. He competed at the 2012 London Olympics and followed that in Brazil in 2016. Good evening, I think it is, to you, Andrew, out in the Canary Islands. Tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're experiencing right now.
Yes, a good afternoon to everybody back home in the tropics in the Caribbean. I'm in the Canary Islands, in Tenerife to be specific. This is my training base. I've been training here for almost 2 years now. And so Tenerife is part of Spain. For those who don't know, it's a Spanish territory. And there's fantastic sailing over here. So I've been here since the 1st of March on this stint. The stint that only was planned to be about 20 days. So around the 20th of March, I was planning to roll out of here. We're now on the 22nd of May. So very interesting. But I would say that this has been probably the best situation in my entire training career to be stuck at.
I'd be happy to be stuck in Spain.
I have made fantastic gains in my training across the board. I'm stuck with my training partner, who is the Olympian from El Salvador. My coach lives down the street, so I could see him whenever I want. And to me, I'm super happy. The only thing that's hard for me is being stuck away from my family and my wife and my loved ones, you know. So yeah, it's been interesting being here in Spain, but I'm not scared of the COVID. I'm just ready for the Olympics to happen.
I just wanted to share with you the fact that we have another Olympian with us, Frederick Dakers from Jamaica, who is also with us in this forum. And earlier he spoke about the frustration that he's going through in Jamaica, not knowing exactly what is going to happen, how accessible facilities will be for him to continue training. I guess it's slightly different to where you are, because the World Health Organization declared a pandemic on the 11th of March, and you've been stuck out there in a training environment, so to speak. So you're a beneficiary of being there and being in a training environment. Is that correct, and a correct assessment of your state right now?
That is correct. Due to my personal opinion, that is not correct to everybody's decision. I'm in one of the worst countries that has experienced the coronavirus. But to me, this is an opportunity. I am not number one in the world. That's the fact. The Olympics was going to be very soon for me, and I was making a really nice climb to the top. My best medal is a bronze medal in a World Cup event. I don't have any gold medals. If I'm not on the top, I want more time. So this to me is fantastic. Let's take all the time we can get. Let's roll with this. I mean, my only concern is if the Olympics would happen or not. That was my main concern. So now that we announced the date, and people don't know, but I've been in the ocean for 3 weeks now over here. For me personally, I'm a professional athlete. I don't like to play with not having the opportunity to make gains. So, for example, over here, things went from really nice to the next day closed. There was no phase and, well, we'll slowly stop doing this. All of a sudden, Friday happened, and Saturday, Sunday, we got the news, and Monday, it was, you can't leave your house. So to me, it was like, wow. And so you don't know, Saturday, Sunday, talking to my wife, what to do? Should I come home? Should I not come home? What to do? And she's like, the Olympics are on, stay. The Olympics are on, stay. Keep training, figure it out, keep training, figure it out. And 2 days later, the Olympics are postponed. And
well,
now,
I mean, it's been listening to that experience, it's really a novel situation, as we would all say. On this panel as well, we have Dr. Shamala Rupchand Martin, the head of the Academy of Sport at the Mona campus. We've been talking about physical therapy and what athletes at your level have been going through. Dr. Martin, tell us a little bit. I mean, fortunate for Andrew, he's not had any injuries or anything like that. I'm sure if he had a situation like that, he would have been in dire straits.
Yeah, yes. If there were injuries, he'd have to worry. But Darren, I'm actually quite pleased, and I guess it's just by chance that we've ended up with two perspectives in the forum today, because we certainly didn't anticipate what Andrew was going to be sharing in terms of his experience, nor Frederick. And it really is great that we've had both, because what you're sort of seeing is the unique way that the current situation, just the exposure to this virus, has affected different types of athletes. And it really puts home to you quite clearly that you can't just lump all athletes together and say, oh, all athletes are going to be in this situation or that situation. The uniqueness of each sport and the training requirements for each sport certainly stands out when you listen to both Frederick and Andrew. Because Frederick is in a sport where he's training a lot with teammates. Yes, you have his individual event in terms of, he's throwing a discus by himself. He's not throwing the discus with other people. But he is part of a bigger team. They work together as a team. They train together as a team. They motivate one another as, part of a team. Andrew is in a situation where he has his training partner there. You're not training as part of a larger team. So even the concept of social distancing for you, if it's just yourself, your other teammate, and your coach, you can safely maintain that and get back to a training environment fairly quickly. Frederick is on the other side where it's a larger group that comes out in terms of training. And, our restrictions and regulations here in Jamaica is not permitting them to go out there and train. And it's very interesting seeing the two ends of the spectrum, because it also speaks volumes to the way that coaches and trainers will have to approach getting these athletes back up to where they need to be in time for a game. They're not going to be able to look at all members of the team and say, we're going to do a one-size-fits-all program for them. So they're going to find themselves having to quickly reestablish some baselines as athletes return to training, reestablish individual baselines, and make modifications to the kind of training programs that they're going to be implementing to them to get them to where they need to be. So it's really nice that you're seeing this concept standing out pretty clearly. And, people will have to recognize that all of the program planning going forward is going to have to be very individualized. It's going to have to be very modified. It's not going to follow the standard protocols of, I might spend 3 months in this phase, 2 months in the next phase, 3 months in another phase. You're going to see people finding themselves having 6 weeks or 2 months to do a ramped up phase of getting them back to where they need to be. And yes, there will be people who are running the risk of injury. With Andrew, on the other hand, you're seeing a far longer period of time to train and get up to a level that will make him far more competitive. So very, very interesting situation that we're seeing.
Yeah, it proves the point that with high-performing athletes, you can't use a broad brush to approach athletes of that sort of ilk. in any component, as a matter of fact. Dr. Olivia Rose Esperance was speaking earlier about looking at the individual situation and customizing a program to suit a particular athlete. Dr. Olivia Rose Esperance, your thoughts on what you're experiencing here right now? Andrew Lewis talking about his positive experience in lockdown as against a bit of frustration from Frederick Dakers.
I'm happy that you mentioned that, because as I was mentioning earlier, people don't cope in the same way, because somebody could also look at a situation with Andrew and say, oh my God, he's at the epicenter of this outbreak and his outlook is completely positive and upbeat, simply because of certain advantages that he has tapped into, which somebody else could have completely looked at it in a completely different way. So again, it's based on the driving force behind why you're doing a particular thing and having a supportive environment as well. And because of that, it is also quite understandable to note the differences that somebody will look at the exact situation and not have similar reaction. So, and again, there are so many idiosyncrasies in terms of different sports. So we're looking at two different athletes that compete in two different sports. So those things also play a factor in how they'll experience and deal with the issue of lockdown and quarantine as a result of the COVID-19. So I really just want to also reiterate the importance that we are athletes, and high performance athletes are individuals, and it will take a tailor-made intervention in terms of dealing with them and adjusting coping interventions as well, because of the differences in terms of how they react to what's happening around them. And even with their great talents, this is what I want to also reiterate, is the fact that athletes have really exceptional talents and skills, but they are also right now a part of a big pool going the same thing. So you're not exceptional as it relates to experiencing and living through the pandemic, COVID-19. So we're all in this together, and there are no magic wand situations, and we're just trying to figure this out as best as we can. Be patient with the process and understand that it is okay to fluctuate between, coping well today and not coping so well tomorrow, or having anxiety about the future and, the reopen of sports and competitions. Those are okay emotions to have right now. And as we progress, try as best as possible to stay positive and be grateful.
Let's go to a question. Ms. Asnat Sharp has a question from one of our viewers.
Right. On the point of returning to training, Rick Talks wants to find out the views of the panel on the health risk of wearing masks and working out.
I don't know who would like to take that one, and maybe we can get a perspective from the athletes as well.
Yeah, I would like to actually say something that's very important that I have found has really worked well for me on the understanding of returning to training. For me, there is a lot of very confusing information about what is allowed and what is not allowed. Mm-hmm. And do you call it, what category do you fit in? Are you a professional athlete or not? I think it's very important for all athletes to understand that if you really want to resume training and you feel confident that I don't encourage any athlete to go in to resume training with the incorrect mindset of the fear that if I start training, I may die. That is definitely something that you do not want to enter training with. You really want to enter training with that confidence that you're going in there with, I'm a passionate athlete and I really want to make gains in what I do. So for me, for example, not only is the information very, not misleading, but all over the place and what you can and can't do, because we're involving so much at this point in time, it's also coming in Spanish where I am. So I really have to be aware of what's coming my way. So for example, on a consistent basis, we were consistently in touch with the Coast Guard and the police over here sometimes on a daily basis of what the news said. So we might hear professional athletes can resume. You see Messi and those guys back in training and whatnot in circumstances. But I don't make a move until I call the Coast Guard. Hey, we're going to be entering the water today for the first time in a long time. Is it okay? yes, you all have the permission, you have the letters from the Olympic Committee, you have the letters from your federation, you all are good to go. And so said, so done. And the police came on the water, checked on us, see, are you Andrew Lewis? Yes. Are you Enrique Arathon? Yes. And grant you permission to continue. So don't just, well, I saw an article in the papers that I could go and start running again. Don't just jump out like that. Really understand what you're allowed to do and confirm what you're allowed to do with the necessary people. So that also gives you the confidence to return in a manner where, yes, man, I could go and do this and I could resume training. As well as I found it really important to get extremely clever. I turned half my house into a gym and a little bit of a physiotherapy area, because at some point in time we were stretching each other and massaging each other. Of course, not in the way to any way that's very aggressive or risky, but just simple, have the athletes move the lactic acid a little bit, because we were training extremely hard inside here to the point where we were not getting massages and we were feeling very stiff, but we were stretching a lot. So we were really learning and talking to our massage therapist online and getting video updated. Hey, you got to help him here a little bit and so off. And then also to the point where in my sport, it's very important, and I believe in all sports, it's extremely important to study your competitors on exactly what they do and to understand the rules of your sport. And I actually hired a guy from Argentina who's a rules specialist to come in and work with me for a few days in a week to understand every single rule, because rules could make or break an athlete so fast. What you can't do, hey, why this didn't happen? And rules are also evolving like life. So I've taken this opportunity to, things that I normally won't do. I could tell you exactly what the guy from Cyprus is going to do when he's sailing, because I've watched him so many times. I can tell you what the British guy, I've seen him so many times in the videos, and I'm watching it over and over. So when I know what I'm going to attack an athlete in a certain way, I have an idea what's going to come. So I've really been able to build that opportunity
Excellent.
With technology.
That's very commendable there, Andrew, because you speak about two very important points, your ability to adapt and your ability to pay attention to detail, which has really pitched you forward. I'm just going to allow one member of the panel to answer that question with regard to the mask, and then we have another guest that we will introduce, because I think this realm is very important. In lockdown, a person's diet is so crucial. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So I don't know if Dr. Rupchand Martin or Dr. Rose Esperance would like to answer that question.
Just to remind our listeners and our viewers as to what the question was.
The question was, what are the health risks of wearing masks and working out?
Right. So in terms of the concept of working out with masks, that's an interesting one, because there are different types of masks that we have. So I need people to separate out the concept of these pressure masks that are used for training for altitude, which athletes who travel to compete at a high altitude will be more familiar with these pressure masks that are meant to help you adapt for there, versus the masks that people are currently being asked to wear, which are your basic, some of them made out of fabric, surgical masks. They're more the masks that are used in general health and safety for wellness, because the impact of the two types of masks on training is a little bit different. The regular masks that we're being asked to wear, there's, in terms of health risk, the problems that athletes will find is, as you train, you need to take in more air as the intensity of training goes up, and then you begin to feel like you're gasping and you're struggling and you're not getting enough air in, because that mask on your face makes it feel like the airflow is in fact restricted a little bit. So it's that sense of panic that can occur with them as you're training with them, and you just feel like you're not getting enough oxygen. That creates a bit of that risk sensation. The other types of masks are the ones that there's been a lot more concerns and queries about those out there, because there are some research that has been showing a risk of lung collapse when you're wearing those pressure training masks. So it's one of those that you really have to work very carefully with your health professionals and the rest of your team in terms of management when you make these decisions about wearing those pressure masks that are used for altitude training. So the health risks are a little bit different depending on the kind of mask you're talking about. In terms of the regular masks that we're wearing for just health and safety perspective out there, there's no clear health risk that jumps out to me that I'm aware of. And I mean, I'll ask other members of the team can chime in if they're aware of any. Essentially, what they're trying to do with those masks is to reduce the risk of you exposing other persons to the virus, because the harder you work out or the higher the intensity of the workout, the more forcefully you're going to be expelling air. So the potential for that air and the virus to be transmitted over a great distance is increased, hence the need to wear those masks out there when you're training. So even if you're going out, for example, to run on a track by yourself and you're not in close proximity with anybody else, there's really no real reason to be wearing a mask, because there's nobody in your immediate surroundings that you're going to be putting at risk. But if I'm out there training together with 4 or 5 other team members, every time I run and I'm breathing out at a heavier and heavier rate, air is being expelled more forcefully, and it means you're putting people at higher risk of contracting a virus in case you are infected. So that's the health risk that we're concerned about when we talk about people wearing these masks still, if you're going to the gym or if you're going out there in terms of running or training. It's the risk of exposing the rest of the public and the people around you. That's of concern.
Yeah, I think an easier option would be to train by yourself in an open space where you're not in close proximity to others. So good pieces of information there, Dr. Rupchand Martin. I'd now like to introduce Ms. Safia Beckford, who is a registered dietitian and I understand a personal trainer as well. She's located in Trinidad and Tobago. So good evening to Ms. Beckford. Glad to have you in this forum. And we've been speaking a lot about high performance sport, the impact of COVID-19. We've had a lockdown period. Some countries are slowly opening up now. How would you assess generally high performance athletes during this lockdown period, what they should have been doing, and what would you recommend for them now that they're entering, sort of getting back to training and competition?
Hi, Darren. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. That's a really good question. And coming from the discussion that all of the panelists would have had before, athletes have to worry about cancellation and postponement of events. This is a really uncertain time. They don't know when they'll be allowed to train like how they usually train. In Andrew's case, he was able to continue training, and that's really good for him. Some of the things that athletes need to keep in mind during this time is that they should reach out to professionals that they have access to. So if they don't have eating difficulties, they should reach out to a dietitian. The eating difficulties that they may have during this time do have a psychological component to it, because they may feel internal and external pressure to maintain a certain body composition so that they don't reach too much of a deficit in their training and the outcomes that they want from their training. Some of the things that I would recommend would be maintaining a healthy diet. More specifically, when it comes to the macronutrients, I urge them to make sure they are getting enough calories. Some of them may be at a lower level of training at this point in time. Their calories may be adjusted in that way, but they want to watch out for decreasing their calories too much, because then they won't be able to train properly and they won't be able to reap the benefits of the training, and they won't be able to adapt as well. They should also try to minimize caloric restriction unless they are trying to lose weight during this time. So they may have been overeating, they may have had a lapse where they, again, psychology, where they feel like, I just can't do this, I need a break, this is too much for me, and just really let go and indulge.
I want you to hear Frederick Dakers. I'm not going to say what he said before we started this forum, but Frederick, what was your approach during this lockdown in terms of your diet and your eating habits?
Biggest of throws, but that was, oh, sorry. Are you guys hearing me?
We are. Go ahead.
Awesome. See. So I was saying that I'm not really the biggest thrower, but I realized that over time I started to put on size that wasn't needed for me. So with my diet, I realized that I have a weight problem in that I can't really I lose weight very quickly. Weight very quickly, so I have to eat unhealthy to actually maintain and put on weight. So what I've done now, really and truly, is that I realized that I got too big, and I never had like the what do you say, like I wasn't as lean, and I couldn't move as quickly, and in terms of doing normal things, it felt a bit harder to do. So what I started doing is that I started eating a lot of vegetables. But the thing is that I drop weight really quickly when I eat healthy. So I like in about a week or a week and a half, just like eating vegetables and just like vegetable and protein, like small portions, I literally dropped I'll move from 280 to now I'm at 259 is like a week and a half or 2 weeks, like just eating like that. So now, right now, in terms of that, I'm trying to get my body, I'm trying to be as strong as I can and as lean as possible, and trying to maintain the bulk strength. So like in terms of strength, I'm at about I think I can bench. My strongest I've ever been was when I was at about 275 and I could bench 475 pounds. Now I'm at 259 and I still can bench about 445 pounds, so 100. So like I'm trying to optimize the whole body, like keeping healthy and all that. So my diet has changed a bit, where I'm not eating like unhealthy as much. I do have to eat unhealthy somewhat to actually maintain the weight, but nothing major.
Frederick, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is that something that you've developed on your own, or is that professional advice? I mean, we have a dietitian in the forum. I mean, it's very important for persons to understand what happens with high-performing athletes.
Yeah, I cannot say that it's professional. Like, it's just something that I had to do, because I realized that, everyone is dynamic and the body is dynamic, so you can't really use the same thing to gain. Like, you can't really use the same perspectives to actually gain what, like, for example, I may perform better at a certain weight. So for me, my performance weight, like in terms of the best I've ever performed, was like probably about 268. So because I knew I needed to get to that weight, I had to lose weight. But not everyone loses weight, at the same rate. So I basically designed something that actually works for me. So I cannot say it's really the professional way of doing things. And, it wasn't really the way how I gained weight. It was not the right way. I must say it was not the right way, because the way how I gained weight was, I realized that I cannot eat and gain weight as fast as I would want to. So what I did is that I legit got, I went out and purchased like 2 cases of soda.
Okay, I'm not gonna let you expose yourself in this forum. All right.
This is the right way, but this is the way that worked for me. I was trying to gain weight and I could not gain weight. I realized that, sugar, and fat and all. So I said, okay, cool. I literally went out and bought 2 cases of Pepsi, and for like a week I only drank Pepsi. I'm sorry, this is not good.
I know Miss Beckford will not be happy with this. I'm going to ask her to respond, but before she responds, we have a question. We'll take this question, Ms. Hasnat Sharp.
We have 2 questions actually. One is, do you think there will be some level of fear pertaining to the physical environment when athletes and or teams go to events post COVID-19?
Let's hear from Andrew Lewis. Andrew?
Fair-wise, to be honest, there's going to be fair in everything you do in life. And it's really and truly, you know, you have two styles. You have fear-based living people and you have excitement-based living people. I believe that it's really important to not live on the fear-based side of things. I am a Catholic and I believe in faith. Everyone has their own religions, their own styles. It's really important that we all are going to have times in our life where we become fearful. But the more faith we have in ourselves, that we can achieve more things. And the more things we do to prove to ourselves every day that we can achieve these little small things. For me, for example, it's super important to make up my bed and to have a cold shower every time I shower. I commit to those two things. I don't shower in hot water. I feel really bad about myself. I don't make my bed. Those two small things for me are big commitments that I get done every time I do. So doing these little things to me every day show that commitment and keep me away from the fear-based side, but more on the excitement side. Because I get excited. They go in cold water and shower. Tell me don't get excited. You know, so that's just my style, that if you really do all the things that will really help you stay on the excitement side of things, fear will slowly go away from your life.
Okay, talking a little bit about your routine there, Andrew. I think there's another question.
Right, we have a question for the sport nutritionist from Rory Alvarenga, our national swim coach in Jamaica. What is the guidance for swimmers in adjusting their calorie intake if they're accustomed to burning 1,500 calories per session for 9 sessions a week and now they can't swim with the pool closure? You got that?
Yes, I did. That's a very specific question, and like the athletes were alluding to, everyone is different, and there will be an individual approach for each of the swimmers. What they should focus on, they are obviously not swimming right now because a lot of the pools and stuff still haven't opened. I'm not sure what the situation is in Jamaica, but that's how it is in Trinidad right now. Swimming uses up a lot of carbohydrates. So I think one strategy they could use is, if they were accustomed having half their plate with carb-rich foods, they can decrease that amount to about quarter or a third of the plate instead. Keep up their fruit and vegetable intake and focus on lean proteins. In terms of a specific amount of calories, again, that would be very individual, and the amount that they would have to cut would be very individual as well. So I can't give too much of a specific answer to that question.
Let me ask you a question as I have you there, Ms. Beckford. You earlier heard from Frederick Dacres talking about his own self-management of his weight, his diet. Is that one of your pet peeves? High-performing athletes going about making decisions as it relates to their diet without having the specialists oversee that?
Yes, it is a pet peeve, because I think nutrition is kind of taken for granted when it comes to sports, but it is a very important aspect because it does affect you physically, it affects your performance. Take hydration, for instance. Just 2% decrease in body weight due to dehydration could cause your performance to decrease. Dehydration causes performance to decrease as much as 30%, and that's just not drinking enough water. So when you combine that with other unhealthy habits or undesirable habits, then you really could do some damage to your performance. And also it does have a psychological component to it. So trying to maintain your weight and your body composition during this time. While there are better methods of gaining and losing weight, I wouldn't say that what he's doing is totally incorrect, because there is room for high calorie food. Like, we have to be flexible. You can't just eat vegetables and lean chicken breast all the time. It really doesn't work. So just having a flexible mind, and even if you don't have a long session with the dietitian, just check in once you have that access to one. Check in and ask a question. Is this okay? What is a better method? So I would say instead of having your soft drinks, that you could do smoothies and include things like peanut butter or avocado. Those have healthy fats and they are also high in calories. So that would be a better approach.
All right. Well, we've solved that problem for Frederick Dakers here. Now he's got the right pieces of information to make that change. As we move to close this public forum, I just want to go around to the panelists now and ask. I'll start with Dr. Olivia Rose Esperance. Considerations in the medium to long term that high-performing athletes will need to take from a psychological point of view. Just quickly, your thoughts?
From a psychological point of view, I'm just going to encourage us all and high-performance athletes to have routines because we never know when sports will reopen. So have routines that you still try to stick at. I heard Andrew mention, making his bed. Try to win the mornings. Have a support team, and that could be family or friends that really encourage you, keep you motivated. Get adequate rest. I know other members of the panel can attest to the importance of this. And as much as possible, stay socially connected while maintaining physical distance.
Dr. Rupshan Martin, your closing thoughts and considerations for high-performing athletes as we move forward in this COVID-19 pandemic?
Darren, what I'd like to say is that high-performance athletes need to be mindful of the fact that you have to continue to maintain an exercise routine and schedule, because just routine day-to-day fitness is particularly important. So whilst I may not be able to go out to a swimming pool and swim laps and burn that 1,500 calories every morning, you can certainly get out of bed the same time and do some other kind of physical activity at home. Dancing, aerobics, these will all still keep your cardiovascular system going, and you'd be amazed at how quickly you can still burn 800, 900 calories just setting up these routines at home. So it's really important for them to understand that you cannot afford to just shut down mentally and physically and say, we don't know when there's an event going to be, so I'm not going to train. They have to maintain a level of fitness baseline so that when competitions are announced again, you can quickly get to where you need to be, and try and stick with it in the context of what was your regular routine, as Olivia said. So if you used to train at 5 o'clock in the morning, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but work out a routine around something that you can do within the constraints of your government regulations, health regulations, guidance that are there. And there's tons of resources out there to tap into to help you keep exercising and burning these calories.
Frederick, to you, your last comment. Tokyo 2021 is obviously your new objective. What will be your approach beyond today in preparation for that opportunity?
For me, it's more like all right, so for me, this time is really because of the break and everything, I really had time to reflect and, really think about what, I could do better. So as I said, I realized that, my weight was really, my weight was okay, but it could have been better. So that is where I'm at now, and it's really to get my body to a point where I can do what I want when I want, and the whole struggle of actually moving, that is going to be out, because I'm actually trying to use the weight that I have to the best of my ability instead of bulking. So it's really to iron out my shortcomings, like anything that I had to rush. Now it's to work on my technique, gain weight properly, and to actually just relax and do what you're supposed to, because competition is coming up. So yeah.
I will still just do you a favor and pass on Miss Beckford's phone number so she can probably guide you in terms of your diet going forward. All right, that's just my small favor to you. Let's go to Andrew Lewis. Andrew, it was good to hear you talk about access to the sea and to the ocean, something that is very necessary for you and your sport. Here in Trinidad, a lot of persons were restricted from accessing the beaches around the islands here. Your closing thoughts. I know you're 30 years of age. You have another year now where you will have to wait before you go into your third Olympics. What will be your plans going forward as you meet that opportunity in Tokyo in 2021?
Well, my goal is to go for the gold medal. That's what my definite mission is. But the reality is that more than ever, this is a story unfolding that I'm opening a new page to every day. And the more times that I could open the page and get excited about what I see on the page is the closer it's going to bring me to that gold medal. So every day I remind myself that I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. No one knows what's going to happen tomorrow. No athlete, no coach, no nothing. But what I do know is every day I open that page, I have a lot of hours until I go to bed, and just flat out with the training that I have, flat out with the food that I eat, flat out with everything, maximize it. Because if I was to come here and tell you that, oh, well, you know, that we're going to do this and this, that might change tomorrow. So I'm going to keep it really simple and just make sure that every hour that I'm awake, I'm going to make sure it is best spent to achieve that gold medal that I'm working towards.
Thanks for that. I can hear that positivity in your voice. On behalf of everyone here, we'd like to wish you and Frederick the very best as you go forward to that Olympic opportunity in Tokyo 21. Finally, Ms. Safia Beckford, your last thoughts and considerations that high-performing athletes should have as they get back into training and eventually competition? Ms. Beckford, are you there?
Yes. Again, just making sure that they get enough calories to maintain the training that they are doing now. Again, not too much, not too little. Same goes for protein. Protein is really important in maintaining that fat-free mass, so all that muscle mass that is important for strength, power, speed. Make sure that you are eating enough protein, but not too much, because too much protein can have a detrimental effect to your body composition and performance. Also, make sure you get a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. Those are where you get a lot of your micronutrients, and a lot of those micronutrients are important in immune function. So making sure that you don't get sick. Even if you don't get COVID virus, you still have the common cold and other ailments that high-performance athletes may suffer from or contract during their training time.
Thanks for that. I understand that Dr. Rudolph Alleyne is still with us. I'll give him the opportunity to give closing comments on this forum, and specifically sports science, high-performing athletes. What's your message to those athletes who are slowly getting back into competition and training?
Thanks again, Darren. What I would say, I like Andrew's approach. Take each day at a time, one day at a time, every hour, every second. All right. Try to build your program around moving towards that goal that you have. And wherever possible, make sure that you're contacting those professionals in the field, all the sports scientists that you know of, the sports psychologists, the nutritionists, the physios. Make sure that you're getting the best advice from them as you move forward towards that goal. Yes, this is a period where we're kind of in lull as it relates to sport, but see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? And work towards that final goal that you have, and make sure that you're successful in doing that.
Thanks for your closing comments. This has been a thoroughly informative session. I've totally enjoyed moderating this forum. I'd like to personally thank all the panel members and all our guests who took the time out to be part of this public forum hosted by the Faculty of Sport at the University of the West Indies. In closing, we all know how important sport is, and the return of sport is to health, to the economic side of things, to the social and cultural side of us as human beings. I would just like to share the message of us not compromising our health. Ensure that you follow your public health authority and take all precautionary measures so you don't put yourself at risk, your family, and the community at risk. We do hope for those of you who followed this forum and who were live in terms of our YouTube platform and who are looking on, and those of you who would look at this recorded piece, we thank you for taking the time to listen to us. We hope that this has made a positive impact in terms of the sporting landscape, and more so the approach required for us in sport. We're all practitioners of sport. We would also like to thank those of you who have made this possible. From the Faculty of Sport Office, Ms. Asnat Sharp, who would have contributed with the questions. We had Ishmael Preston from the MITS Department of the University of the West Indies, and everyone who has made this possible. We thank you. Stay safe, maintain good hygiene, and be responsible in your actions. Take care and have a good evening.